Do you have a question?
Hi, this is Rakesh. I represent, like, I've been in the United States for the last 10 years now. I've did my master's here and I've been working in H1B for the last 5 years. And I'm waiting the green card line for the last 4 years. As you know, I'm obviously from the country where I think backlog for 60 to 70 years. I've applied the green card in 2012, and I think I'm going to wait like another 20 years or maybe even more to get my green card. So, first thing, question from this one, like, is there a possibility that someone from like stakeholders, actual stakeholders like us, be represented on the panel? I know we have a distinguished panel there, but is there a possibility that someone from like the skilled immigrants be on the panel to talk more on like skilled immigrants issues around like why can't we, reduce the time frame on getting green cards, like given to particularly to countries like India, China, and Philippines. And the second question is the executive order. I know you guys mentioned the rule that came up recently. Really said portable work authorizations, right, for high skilled immigrants while you're waiting in LPR. But then the rule is like very restrictive. It might probably help like one person per program, like 1 million people that are out there. I mean, it helps us in like maybe moving jobs to another, like getting promotions. But then finding the actual employer, like who actually sponsor us again, and then even convincing them that okay, you have to also sponsor a green card, but actually even slow down the process. So I think it might not help us, like the 28,000 comments that you guys mentioned that were out there. Probably most of them said like, can we just get an I-140 EAD because we have an I-140 proof, can we get an EAD? So where in the process, like, from the executive order to the final rulemaking, how did this point get that okay, maybe we can give them an EAD because getting after the green card is going to take quite a long.
Sure, understood.
So I'll let Zero answer the
Yeah.
second question.
Let's try to repeat the question real fast. Do you want it the first one or the second
We'll
one?
do the second. So the second question was, in reflection of the executive memo or executive order, giving an option for EADs for an I-140 filed, and the final rule that came out, what sort of considerations were made during that time
Right.
to address generously the executive order?
Well, we saw a lot of comments on that, obviously, and thanks for your comment and the comments that were submitted. There's two kind of issues there, I think. There's portability on your I-140 when you can still adjust status to permanent residence, even though you might have left or no longer have a job offer from the original employer, right? So in that regard, we heard, hey, we want to be able to portal, get I-140 approved. I no longer need to have a job offer from that employer. I can go work somewhere else and adjust status once my priority date becomes current and I can file. We ran into an issue in the INA and the DOL regs because under the EB2 and EB3 categories, generally, unless you have a national interest waiver, a labor market test must be done in order to there to be a valid job offer for a job you're going to adjust status to. So if you no longer have a job offer from the previous employer, you go to another employer, you need to have a job offer that's valid. And this law kind of constricts us, and the employer has to recruit for U.S. workers generally. As far as the EAD goes, I know a lot of people expected more from the EAD, right? It's a compelling circumstances EAD. You have to be in a certain non-immigrant status. What are compelling circumstances? We give you a few examples, right? And you don't know if you'll ever be able to really qualify for that. There's a balancing act there too because we have an I-140 program in place. And I know there's a long wait for everything right now, and that's a visa number issue. That's a visa limit issue in the law, right? It's only a certain number per year. And if you're from certain countries, all countries can only have 7% of those allocations each year. That would take congressional action to fix that. But as far as giving EAD to everybody who's an approved I-140, if we did that, the way we looked at it is you no longer will have employers sponsoring anybody because as soon as you sponsor someone, they can leave on their EAD. So that was the concern.
That's a good thing, right? By not doing that, you're picking sort of slaves to those employers. Like, he wants to keep us forever.
Okay, understood. I know having to stay at the same employer for a long, I get
No,
that.
we totally understand that
We
position.
tried to put other things in there that would help you, like these grace periods, and like priority date retention, not revoking an I-140 that's been withdrawn or the business terminates after 180 days. All those H-1B improvements, the recapture we started talking about, the AC-21 extensions, and the EAD. There were other things we put in there, like the whistleblower protections, all that stuff to try and mitigate some of that. But we were confined by the law in some way and in the general structure of our sponsorship of employment-based immigration.
So
So,
are there any future plans going back and look at any of these?
I mean, obviously, it depends a lot on
Everything's up in the air
what's
right
going to
now.
happen in the next administration, right? But we always, a lot of this was as a result, and I didn't get exactly what you wanted, but it was a result of pressure from stakeholders and for requests to the government, to the president saying, this is what I want. Keep doing it. And when you hear other individuals saying, well, we should have less of this kind of immigration and less of that, well then say, well, educate them on why you think you should have it and that kind of thing and push for it. But right now, we don't know what's going to happen in the next administration, so.
Right, and there are two things to it. I mean, here we came in, and we stayed here for like, I know some companies have stayed here for like 10 years. They probably even have years old kids, they could want here.
Right.
And then after 12 years, like, for some reason, they're like, okay, your company doesn't want to sponsor your green card, your company doesn't want to extend your residency.
Right.
So here, okay, you have to go back.
Understood.
You have kids here, you have like houses here, and you have like cars, everything. You just have 60 days, and then you live in the
Mhm.
where you have to sell everything, take your kids back for US citizens, and say, okay, you don't no longer belong here, let's go back.
I get you.
We get it.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I asked the first question.
Absolutely, yeah, and I wanted to go to that. I think one of the ways that we try and give a voice to people like yourself, I mean, I think it's important for you to be able to speak directly to our office, to USCIS, because you, the foreign national, as well as the employer, influence how policies are written, how regulations are drafted. The comment period, of course, is an important place to put your voice forward. For our office, what we try to do is we host teleconferences and always open those up to engagement. I know it might not be it might not be as satisfying, but it's definitely one area that we've tried to get an opportunity for people to have their voice heard. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, I would be happy to have someone with a worker's perspective on a panel of mine. So it's definitely not an issue that we're closed off to. I think it's just difficult when the issues come down to either congressional act or limitations by what's currently in law. The question is, well, what can we talk about? What are constructive things that we can try to move forward? And so that's where, looking at ways to find options within the current laws, ways to educate your employers, or educate your staff, or educate your colleagues so that the laws are upheld in an appropriate and correct way. And then also to become engaged, to go to your representatives, state level, local level, federal level. And I mean, I know you're shaking your head, but it's just that is where we're at. That is what we can do, and until the laws are changed, we're limited with that type of effort. So I think with one more question.
Can I continue